We have finished 2 years in the UTSA Revamped franchise, and today we're going to recap the second season and talk about what is to come in the third season of this dynasty. Thank you all for the support here, getting this series going again this year, the UTSA Dynasty. The return has been a lot of fun, and I'm having some of my most fun playing NCAA 14 I ever have. I'm really enjoying College Football Revamped. And we're now 2 years into this series. Now, this hasn't been a huge rebuild. I mean, in the 2 seasons now in this series, we have won 8 games, including a bowl each season. But we still have a team that's been challenging to play with. We've had some really good games, and I think that in year 2, everything was just better. The games were more competitive. The games were higher scoring. It just had that college football feel to it, and it felt more like in any of these games anything could happen, and that's the direction I've been trying to steer things. You know, I do a lot with sliders and everything to try and get the game to play the way I want it to, and I have so many years experience doing this, I kind of know what button you gotta push here, like what's going to make the ultimate difference, what's going to... because everything is so interconnected. So I'll get into more of the slider stuff probably later as we talk about stats and everything, but I kind of know what direction things need to go when you're looking for the CPU to play a certain way or for just certain things to happen. But I want to recap the season today, talk about stats, players, where are we going in the future, all that good stuff. And I had some points of emphasis with how I adjusted the sliders this year and what I was trying to get out of the games, and I have the data on that. Turned out very good. So, UTSA in Season 2. Like I said, it was an 8-5 season for us, and we managed to get off to a solid start against Appalachian State and Notre Dame. Jacoby Criswell, the new quarterback, took over, and the offense immediately looked a lot better. We tripped up here in overtime against Oklahoma State. That was a really good game. Went to overtime. And this was another example of us kind of having a defensive collapse in the second half. And that was an unfortunate theme of the season against Kansas. Another competitive game against them. The Jayhawks are not just rolling over in these matchups. They beat us in year 1. It went down to the wire in year 2. We had an easier time against Utah State, 35-14. Then going on the road to face UNC. This was another defensive collapse, giving up 4 touchdowns in the second half and blowing a lead. I believe we led this game 20-10. And then things really got out of hand as UNC scored the last 4 touchdowns of the game. And then against Texas, they were a lot more dominant in this game, 27-3 at halftime. We managed to play better in the second half, but it wasn't enough. West Virginia. So, I talk about this, NCAA, it really feels like there is an element under the hood of home field advantage. I pretty much have always won more games at home than on the road. And West Virginia played us really tough in this game. 3-point finish, went down to the wire. They kicked the game-winning field goal with 38 seconds to go. Didn't have a great drive trying to go back and retie the game. So West Virginia gave us a loss there. And then I was messing around a bit with the sliders, and this Texas Tech game came out a little weird. Like, man coverage got super overpowered in this. The CPU wasn't able to do much. Sliders kind of got fixed after that. It wasn't even like a slider change I made that was weird. It's just sometimes when you're messing around with them, EA games will play strange the next game or two. I see it in Madden, I see it in NCAA, I've encountered this countless times. But 35-6, a more dominant game for us, a great day for Curtis Davis. And then we play Baylor at home. This was a nice, even matchup, or so we thought. And then we turn out to blow out Baylor in this matchup, score a big conference victory. And then we go on the road to take on UCF. and once again blow a second half lead, go to overtime, and lose. Cincinnati at home, just an offensive showcase for us, a very action-packed game from us. And then the bowl game against Auburn, we blow a second half lead, go to overtime, but this time we do pick up the win. We had a lot of great games. We had 3 overtime finishes this year. And then it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the games were decided by 1 score. And, you know, in college, you're going to have blowouts. Like, you're going to have a 52-20 in there sometimes, or a 35-6 against the non-conference opponent. So, I think 6 one-score games is pretty good. And just in general, I had a lot of fun playing the games. So, there's the statistical evidence and then just the anecdotal evidence that I think shows this year was a lot more fun. So, Jacoby Criswell, the transferred quarterback away from UNC. So, transfers were a big part of this season. And using the tools that have been made for Revamped, I'm able to allow transfers to play that first year. There were like 120 transfers, and in the file, you just change one value and that player will become eligible, and it doesn't tell you what player is what. Either way, I wanted everybody to be eligible. So we immediately got to play Jacoby Criswell, 26 touchdowns to 18 interceptions, and I really liked playing with him. I felt like the 77 accuracy didn't hold him back all that much, and I talk about this game being a Patrick Mahomes simulator. That's what NCAA 14 is. 77 speed is enough to do a lot of that stuff outside the pocket, especially with very good acceleration and agility. So we're able to escape the pocket, make a lot of plays with Jacoby. If he gets a speed boost in the offseason, it could be even more dangerous going into his senior campaign. So Bob Young didn't end up getting to play. It would have been a very different season if he did. He's not mobile, and his throw power is not near Criswell. If we had to stick with Bob Young, it probably... See, the thing is I have a running scheme I want to do. But when I think about where Bob Young would succeed, it's like an air raid offense. Just spread them out, quick hitters. That's Bob Young's game. That's what he would be tailored to do. So, it never came down to figuring that out. On the ground, this was a big issue, I think. So, Vince Taylor ran for 3.6 yards a carry, and I thought he was going to have like legit 1,200 yards this year and be a star. And his efficiency went way down. He didn't have the same explosiveness. And we turned over to Curtis Mills after a while, and he just seemed to be better. It was hard to really describe it, but the numbers show Mills was much, much more effective, even if Vince Taylor is a higher rated running back by 9 overall points. Now, I think I found why the running game has been so weird these 2 years. You see me try to run to the outside. I want this to be a very outside-oriented running game. We don't really have the power to run inside. We don't have the blocking and the running back skill set to run between the tackles all the time. So I want to be like outside zone, stretch, toss, all that stuff. But it just seemed like Taylor couldn't get to the edge. And a lot of people thought it was a speed threshold issue. And I knew it couldn't be, because I'm playing on a 32 speed threshold, which is, I believe, the most popular speed threshold. It does skew things towards the faster players and separates them a little bit. In the UTSA Dynasty, or rather, in the Kalispell Dynasty, I played on a 25 threshold, so it wasn't that far off. I think I found that the issue was something in the under the hood data related to stamina. So I'm using the C-Gator patch that a lot of people use in College Football Revamped. And what that is it's a profile. And the profile contains slider data and other data under the hood that impacts how the game is played. So a lot of that you can't edit unless you are using an editor on a PC. And there's been a lot of manipulation to stamina in that file. In the beginning of the series, running backs were disappearing because they were a little too aggressive with it, and the auto subs were set up in a way to where running backs were disappearing. So I toned down. There's a stamina value under the hood that you can adjust, and I think it's like a 0 to 256 value slider. And I don't know what it started at, but I've been knocking it down at multiple points. And I did so late in the season this year again. And if you look at the last few games, and if you just go back and watch some of those runs, it looked like Vince Taylor had his speed again. And it looked like he had a chance to get to the edge. I think the issue was that players, and especially running backs, were losing stamina too much and not recovering, so they couldn't get to the outside consistently. You can maybe do it first play of a drive, but you couldn't keep following it up. So that's how you end up with a much better running game here against Cincinnati, for instance. 93 from Mills, 54 from Taylor. So this is one of the things I'm paying attention to in the next season. Now that I've made that change, what does that do for the running game? Because I eventually started to bump up the slider value for user run blocking, but now I wonder if it needs to be up at all. So I bumped it up to 5 and then took it down to 4. I'm leaving it there until next season, and we'll see how some of the games go. The running game didn't feel overpowered. I just don't want it to get to that point. But we ran really well against Cincinnati. And then against Auburn, it was more challenging and we couldn't lean on it as much. And the ultimate goal is ratings mattering. You know, we shouldn't be able to run easily on every team. And strengths and weaknesses should be felt. And Auburn, an SEC defense, kept our running game in check. So I do think Vince Taylor could bounce back in a big way next year with that simple fix, allowing him to be the speed back that he is meant to be. Now, why did Curtis Mills average 2 yards a carry more on the same settings? That still beats me. I really don't know. But I knew when I was running with Taylor, I was not getting everything out of him speed-wise and explosiveness-wise. Mills has even worse stamina. It did feel like Mills did a better job of grinding through contact and everything. I don't know. Another player who was really exciting to get to know this year was Keatron Jackson. 222 yards on the ground with 4 touchdowns. He finished the year, actually 5 touchdowns. 3 rushes to 20 yards or more. His speed always showed up for us in a big way. And I'll probably be using him even more next season. But 25 rushes, 44 receptions, 600 plus yards, and 4 touchdowns. I didn't use him as a deep threat a ton. I really wanted him to be more of a catch and run threat. So that's why his average yards per catch were so low. 267 yards after the catch. And if we look at the other receivers, how does that compare? Pretty good. I mean, Wright had more, but consider he had a couple deep balls where he like catches the ball 50 yards downfield and then runs for another 30. So Wright had a lot of yards after the catch, but those were yards way downfield. They weren't like on screens as much as Jackson. One more thing here on the running game. Just want to compare some numbers from one year to the next. Vince Taylor, down year. Hopefully he's here again next year. You know, you wonder about juniors declaring, players transferring. It seems to be a risk here. So hopefully he's back and can finish his career the right way. But still, Mills has earned playing time and still getting starts, I believe, until further notice. Receiving, Joe Wright, I think, was the most improved player on the entire team. Joe Wright as a rookie was Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Big receiver, speedy, can go down the field, but who knows if he's going to catch it. 509 yards, 2 touchdowns, 10 drops. This year, I think he moved from Marquez Valdes-Scantling to Julio Jones. I think he can do it all. He's effective in the screen game. He's effective on the deep ball. He can make plays in traffic now. He does everything you can ask him. He finished with 997 yards, and over 300 of those came in the last 2 games of the year. He was the MVP of the bowl game, had an 84-yard touchdown in the second half, had another ridiculous touchdown late in the year on that play where he bounced off everybody and spun toward the middle of the field, and then only 2 drops. He could catch the ball this year. 80 catching made a huge difference for him, and I can't wait. Next year he could be even better. We'll see what his development does, but we now know that Joe Wright needs a lot of targets. So when we came into this year, I really thought that Darren Rose was going to be like the target leader and probably the leading receiver, because I didn't know if I could trust Joe Wright, and Keatron Jackson was an unknown. Now, Darren Rose was really good, but we were able to spread the ball around because Jackson helped out so much early and Wright was just the number 1 receiver. But Darren Rose, 8 touchdowns. In the middle of the year, he really caught fire, took off, and was a really effective playmaker for us. Always seemed to be there when I needed him. Only dropped 2 passes all season. So we're going to miss him. We're going to miss that 97 route running, that 89 catching, and 92 speed. I mean, he's not a slow guy. So that's a big loss for us, having him graduate. So we're going to ask more next year of a guy like Keatron Jackson, who's not as developed as a route runner, the hands, catching traffic. This skill set is why he gets the targets that he does. We are going to only run like 60, 65 plays a game. And I want, a lot of the routes he runs to just be your simple crossing patterns or orbit motions out of the backfield. So he's a guy you just want to get the ball in his hands and let him do the rest. And I think that'll be his role again next season. Curtis Davis, 41 grabs, 652 yards. He does have the odd drop here and there. He dropped 4 passes this year, 5 the year prior. But I called him Vernon Davis in that bowl game, and I think he has that same ability to stretch up the seam, to be tough after the catch. I like Curtis Davis a lot. And I think that he is probably in for a larger role next season. Because you think about the whole pie here and everybody's piece of it. Joe Wright gets a big piece. Keatron Jackson's got a big piece. So does Davis. Well, Darren Rose is losing. We're losing that piece of the pie. And I don't think we have the depth at receiver to just toss in another 45 catch slot receiver. I think that next year, the third receiver is going to be used a lot more sparingly. And right now, that looks to be Chris Woods. Woods has pretty good speed. He's got decent route running, but he didn't have great hands this year. We'll see how much better that gets. I know he only has 3 drops, but consider we threw him the ball far less. I don't know how many targets he had, but he had 9 catches and 3 clanked off the hands. So, at this point, we cannot trust Curtis Woods. Brandon Reese, fullback, played a lot this year. I think that he's really good at what he does. But now he's graduating. We're going to move on at fullback. Steven Alexander. We brought him in to give us a boost in the running game. And when he was isolated, one-on-one, blocking, I thought he did a really good job. So I think he'll continue to be the second tight end next year. You got Johnny Jenkins, who will compete for playing time. Oliver Carter, who's about to graduate. Deshaun Washington. Not a whole lot else here. Blocking. We also had some transfers come over, and we shook up the running game a little bit. Or the offensive line. Partially because of the running game. But Jalen Garth gives up 6 sacks. He was a transfer. Willie Kelly, I thought he could have played better. He was like our backup center, probably starting center next season. You know, the offensive line's got work to do. I don't think that it's been a big strength. It's just an okay line, but against the wrong opponents, you go up against the Texas, Oklahoma, Auburn, these big programs, that's when their D-lines tend to overwhelm us. So, looks like we're going to lose Marcus Thompson. Javon Morris could declare, maybe not, we'll see. But at least a lot of these players will get to develop for next season. And then defensively, lost a lot of stars from year one, that's for sure. Still had Kyle Jones, still had Preston Quinn, and overall, it was still a decent defense. We had our moments. I was shocked to find this out. So a big thing I wanted to do for year two was balance the trench play a little bit, because it felt like in year one, the pressure was just too much. I mean, we have good edge rushers, and we want their ratings to matter, but it felt like it was a little overpowered in year one. So I boosted the CPU pass block from 45 to 48. I wanted to do that to give the CPU passing offenses a boost. That did happen, and we had more sacks in year two than in year one. I couldn't believe that. Preston Quinn, he had 2 less than his terrific freshman campaign. 32 sacks now in 2 seasons. He's great, a little streaky, and I thought he played kind of poorly in the running game. I don't know if that's a tackling slider, but, 76 tackle, is that good for an end? I honestly don't know, but that maybe tells you why he's just much more of a pass rusher and doesn't help out well in the running game. Eric Crenshaw had the tough task of filling in for Kellen Thomas, and I thought he did a really solid job. He was a disruptor in the middle, and I was very happy with his season. Buster Mitchell came on strong at the end of the year. 22 tackles for loss. I'm really impressed with that, because I know a lot of Quins here. First of all, I believe sacks are factored into TFLs, but quarterbacks in this game, when they feel pressure, they bail to their right, which gives a player like Quinn more chances to get the TFL. But Buster Mitchell had almost as many on the opposite side. He's just kind of a tough, grindy defensive end. I mean, he's not a great athlete. He doesn't have the best ratings. He's not even a big guy. He's just like the hardest worker on defense is the way to describe his play style. I really like Buster Mitchell, and I'm going to miss him after the impact he gave us. He also had 45 tackles. I think he led defensive linemen in tackles. He was legit good against the run and gave us a little pass rush. So we're going to miss him. Patrick Jenkins, transfer, I believe, from TCU. Quiet season. I thought he was decent. He was all right. 77 overall D tackle, 5 sacks, 20 tackles. Just kind of your average run stopper. And then John Davis played a little bit. You see those 4 sacks. He probably played a lot less than Jenkins. Just based on that, should probably play a bit more next year, and I think he has some good run-stopping ratings. Scratch that. 74 strength, maybe not so much, but gave us some pass rush. Kyle Jones. I'd say he's the defensive MVP for this year. Another thing I wanted to do is really make that CPU running game feel like it's a challenge. If you want the CPU to challenge you in NCAA, or you want them to challenge you in Madden, they need to have a good running game, and that's an easy thing to overlook. If you're always dominating your franchises or whatever, and the CPU is getting 60 rushing yards here, 70 rushing yards, I think that's what's missing. The CPU operates so much better when the running game is an option. It gets them into better third downs, gets them more 1st and 10s, helps them out in the red zone. You're going to see a cascading effect for the CPU if you just help out their running game. It'll help them be a better passing team because maybe they're facing less 3rd and longs that way. And that little change can make a huge difference. And that's what I talk about the game being so interconnected. So I understand, all right, if I can boost the CPU running game, maybe I don't have to boost the passing game in any significant way. How does everything, what's the domino effect if you affect this little one area? So, with that being said, The defensive line struggled against the run. It put a lot of stress on the linebackers. Kyle Jones can handle that kind of stress, and I'm really worried about trying to replace him. You know, we don't have another guy that can just slide in and play like Kyle Jones. We certainly don't have that caliber of talent. And the other thing is that all of our starting linebackers were seniors. So it's not just Jones we're replacing, it's the entire core. So next year, I have to figure out how we're going to stop the run without a star linebacker. And that could get real scary. Austin Woods had a sack on the last drive in the bowl game. Other than that, quiet. Bo Frazier, backup edge, quiet season. And then we go down the board here for more sacks. So D-line, I'd say, pretty good at pass rushing. Inconsistent at stopping the run. I liked Buster Mitchell in that department. Linebackers, lacking in coverage. But Kyle Jones flies around. Brandon Ford, I thought, was a little quiet. He got 62 tackles. Didn't really have the splash plays. I was hoping in this revamped series we'd see a bit more of him. I didn't really use him as a pass rusher. I probably should have. But he was just a solid player. Where's Chris Washington? Really quiet. Like, you hardly notice him. He was a big recruit for us in the original Dynasty. He disappointed there. He kind of disappointed here in the revamped series as well. Let's go to, let's talk secondary. A.J. Brown. So, he is a really high-level corner. He's very good. And you'll notice a lot of times CPU quarterbacks won't throw his way. I made a slight change in coverage with the sliders, and it felt a lot more balanced, and they'd occasionally test him. And, you know, there were times when Brown would get beat, allow touchdowns, and then he would win most of the battles. So I thought that was pretty well reflected. And then on the other side, you had Reynaldo Lawrence, nowhere near as good as A.J. Brown. Definitely got lost on passes over his head. And then I played Brandon Matthews again in the slot. Maybe his year one was better. I'm still a Brandon Matthews guy here. I think he's a solid nickel corner. I like him. Next year, though, he might be playing more on the outside. We'll have to see. But overall, I felt like the offense picked up for anything we lost defensively. And it was a solid unit. The safety play. Jason Hall, Dallas Johnson, I think they do a pretty good job with what I ask of them. Sometimes I wish that Johnson was able to show off a bit more range, but he's just like average speed, average cover guy. He's not a center fielder or a cover 2 guy. I think Jason Hall is better just because of his speed. He does have that kind of range. And one thing I love to do in NCAA is I try to put stress on the safeties. I like to call coverages that get the CPU to think, hey, maybe we can make these plays downfield. And then if I have the right safeties out there, then they get a chance to be a ball hawk. So we'll see if that materializes more so in the future. And then James Benson, the senior kicker, he was fantastic for us. 98 kick power, 77 kick accuracy. Only missed 3 kicks this year, 3 kicks last. And his 3 misses this year were all, all beyond 50 yards. So there was some talk about the kicking being a little imbalanced, and it's something I'm keeping an eye on. Like 77 accuracy isn't elite, so why isn't he missing anything shorter? I don't know exactly. I have run some tests in practice mode, and I've seen misses there. I forget where his misses came from last season, but I do think next year it's going to be a bit of a different story because we'll have a new kicker. So, what am I trying to do here? That's right. I have it on 0 field goal accuracy, and the slider is just weird because I have it set to 40 for the CPU. It used to be at 38. I felt like it was a little low, and I should give them a little boost. But the CPU they have missed more kicks than James Benson. And I think a big part of that is simply we face teams that don't have very good kickers. You know, if we go through our schedule, at least some of the teams, like what kickers did we face? You know, we took on, let's see, UCF and Utah State. All right, I don't know if McFarland here missed against us, but he's an 87. UCF has an 82 overall kicker who missed 3 kicks this year, 72 accuracy. Can't remember what kickers missed against us, but I can at least see ratings. Like, when we face kickers that struggled, well, I guess he's an 88. The kickers that struggled against us, I check the ratings, and it's usually a true freshman. 84 in this case, so I guess there were a fair amount of higher rated kickers. It is something I'll pay attention to, though. I want to make sure it's as even as I can make it. Casey Legg, great name for a kicker. You definitely can't be a quarterback if your name is Casey Legg. Yeah, I guess we didn't face that many low-rated kickers after all. I guess you have to look at the accuracy, though. That's the rating. It's not overall. It's no surprise that this year the offense rated so much better than the offense of year one. We had 6,800 total yards, 5,025 of offense. So in year one, we had 4,067. Pretty significant boost there. We had 3,600 passing yards, 1,365 on the ground. This was still a better running game than in year one by about 200 yards. And the points. We scored 301 in year one and 425 in year two. Defensively, we did give up more yards. Ended up being like 900 more than in year one. And in general, I mean, I skewed the sliders in a way that would allow the CPU to have more success. My thing was in year one is it just like, it felt more like ugly Big Ten football or like AFC North football with all those low scoring finishes. And we're in the Big 12 here. Like, our games should be higher scoring. I felt like our defense was maybe like a little too good looking at the ratings. So this year, if you just look at us and the CPU teams together, the games had 18% more yards than in year one, and there were 22% more points. And it just had the college football feel I was looking for from this series. 32 points a game puts us top 5 in the Big 12. We were not a great running team. It's still a work in progress there, but I think next season should hopefully be a different story. Pass the ball a lot, effectively at times. Had a downfield passing attack. You'll see us here, like a higher rated run defense. NCAA is kind of weird in the way they simulate stats. Like, if you throw for 270 yards a game, you're one of the best passing teams in the NCAA. Like, teams run the ball so much in simulating. So I know it looks like on paper we may have a good run defense. And that's why I don't just look at the ranking there. Like, maybe we're top 20 or top 30. But I know that doesn't really mean much, because we're giving up big runs, and teams, I think, had good running success against us overall. I was shocked to see that we had more sacks this year than last. I think that part of that might just be luck and the fact that I was blitzing more, and the blitzes were working. So there are some go-to blitzes I like. You know, 3rd and medium. If it's 3rd and 7 or longer, I love to bring 5 and open up the flats if they're willing to take it, because I'm not counting on them having a catch and run on the flats convert a 3rd and 8. But I dialed up some good blitzes this year. I think I did a pretty good job of that. 8 interceptions, pretty low. We seem to drop a lot of those. It's the same value, 35 interception, that I used in Kalispell. And it's the same value the CPU has. So I think it's just pure luck. Or bad luck in this case. On 3rd downs, we were a 50% team. That is pretty good. We were also a 50% team in year one. I wanted to see if the changes I made giving the CPU a boost to their pass blocking, and then messing with running back ability and run blocking. Now, I did improve the CPU run blocking for much of the year by 1 point, and then I took it back down to 35 because it did feel like it was, they were getting really good blocks in the second level that seemed overpowered. So I went down to 35, but they were better on third down this year. Our opponents had a 42.7% conversion rate on third down as opposed to 39.1. So a slight improvement there. CPU also had more explosive runs. They had 15 go 20 yards or more. We had 9. And again, I think that could just be the stamina thing I believe I fixed, that will maybe allow for a few more explosive runs in the future. We have league leaders, and it's Phil Jerkovic, if I'm saying that correctly, leading the league in passing. Like, NCAA 14 did not simulate high passing numbers last year. I know Bailey Zappi had like 6,000 yards. Last year in real life, there were 6 quarterbacks in college football that threw for more than 4,000 yards. So NCAA 14 is just not skewed as pass heavy. Man, Zappi had 56 touchdowns as well. Leader in touchdowns here is 42, Chance Nolan of Oregon State. But you'll notice here, yardage-wise, our guy, Jacoby Criswell, he's top 10. Rushing, Tyrell Robinson here, 80 overall, 1,800 yards on the ground. Then it's Jalen Mitchell, Hassan Haskins, Richard Newton, Deuce Vaughn. Who was the Heisman winner? Wasn't it that Ohio State running back? Where is he? Travion Henderson. I thought he won Heisman. Who won Heisman this year? Here are the leading receivers. 1,500 leads college football in real life. Last year, the leader was 17-18. These are actually pretty close to the real leaders. Jareth Stearns was the leader a year ago. He's with the Buccaneers right now. Got Zay Flowers there, so that Boston College connection. They had a top quarterback and the top receiver. See a lot more smaller schools here in the top 10 than you might expect. And then to defense, for some reason, they never simulate many sacks. So we had number 1 and 2. Interceptions, 7 would lead. Oh, that's right. It was Austin Jones who won the Heisman. I thought it was Travion Henderson. Okay, my bad. Let's go to, I think I showed off the All-Americans already, but just as a reminder, I never have All-Americans on offense. We always do on defense in my series. Hopefully, you know, one thing I never really do is just give a guy like Cooper Kupp volume or something like that. Like, I usually spread the ball around a lot, so I don't have the best standouts. But next year, I actually think that's going to be different because I don't think our third receiver situation will be as good. And Joe Wright is just so good. I think I need to get him closer to 80 catches next season. So there's going to be, I think, a little shift there to making sure that Joe Wright has a chance to do some serious damage every week. Here are your award winners around college football. Walter Camp goes to Hassan Haskins, the Bednarik Award. All right, Kyle Jones, I think he won that twice. How many of these have we won in my dynasties? The linebacker ones are pretty easy to win. Maybe next year, too, we could see Curtis Davis in the talk for the Mackey Award. I want Joe Wright in the Biletnikoff conversation next year, all right? We got to get him up there. You need to get your touchdowns up if you want to compete with the guys here in the top 10, though. All these guys have like 16 touchdowns, 16, 11, 11, 15. Got to pump those numbers up. And then the Mackey Award, I mean, those numbers up there for Homer here are tough. He even had 27 carries, but maybe we can get Davis at least ranked in here. And then the rest of the awards here. A couple pieces of hardware there for Kyle Jones. Come on, the Groza Award. Where's James Benson? He missed 3 kicks all year. He was so good. Problem is, he missed 3 kicks, and most of those kickers missed 2. I'm not familiar with the Jet Award. Is this new? It's a kick returning. A special teams award. I've never even heard of the Jet Award, and Marvin Stokes came in second. What is next for UTSA in year 3? Well, here are the players we are going to lose. Definitely Kyle Jones. Could we lose Javon Morris? Maybe. James Benson is going to move on. Chris Washington, Darren Rose. AJ Brown. I don't think he declares at 85 overall. Dallas Johnson, though, will be graduating. We'll look for a new starting safety. Brandon Ford. It's not a lot of seniors. The big thing is we're losing all of the starting linebackers and a starting corner and like a tackle. So we're losing some players at some key spots. I do think linebacker here is kind of key because if teams can run on us a lot more effectively, it's going to make the game a lot more difficult. The games where we struggle to stop the run tend to be the games that we lose. So immediately I'm looking at linebacker. Who is going to be replacing the starters? You got Cedric Parker here at 91 speed. Could he become the new Mike linebacker? I don't know. 80 tackle, 79 block shed. He is in the conversation. Who do we think can replace Kyle Jones, though, is the question. So we got Cedric Parker, Keith Cowan at 75 overall. I don't think he's got the run defense to be the Mike. Here, Andrew Ross. Remember him? 6'7". Do you put the biggest guy right in the middle, even with 78 speed? I don't think he's a guy you want a whole lot in coverage, but he is 6'7", so that is a bit of a benefit there. Just a big linebacker in the middle. Doesn't run the best, but he might be the Mike. I think he's got the best run-stopping skill set, perhaps. I think you're looking at him, Cowan, and Parker as the 3 linebackers next year, unless we have a transfer or something. We could really use one there. In the secondary, we lose Reynaldo Lawrence, so the 2 guys I'm looking at here. See, Matthews with 86 speed, he might just stay in the slot. But I like Nick Dorsey with these ratings. He has the speed, the man, the zone, the press. Trent McGee is going to be moving on as well. So move these guys all up the depth chart a little bit. And then for safety, you got Jason Hall next year and Marvin Stokes as more of a full-time player. And if he's playing full-time safety, we'll see if I keep him as a returner. I tend to not like having starters play special teams like that. But injuries aren't a big part of this game. I don't think there's any way to make that the case under the hood. Injuries can be on, injuries can be off, but I don't think that there is actually a value under the hood I can manipulate to get more injuries. There are just very few in this game. So why did they have to go and break Andy McKenzie's tailbone all those years ago? Beats me. The offseason is next, and we already know it's a much better recruiting class than what it was before. We're ranked 22nd right now, and I think we're going to add more players to this list. We have a couple linebackers in there. Could they start? I don't think they're starting caliber as freshmen. Oh, KJ Marseille. I haven't thought about him in a while because he committed so early in the season. But Marseille, could he become a starting corner as a true freshman instead of Nick Dorsey? It depends what his speed is and how Dorsey develops when we move on to year 3. But I think this is a guy we have to get on the field. Next year, we're looking at having a new kicker. Keith Combs will be that kicker, unless there's a transfer. but he's basically uncontested. We know he has 70 accuracy. We don't know his power. And we know that James Benson was very reliable with 77 accuracy. So maybe as a freshman, Combs isn't as reliable, but I think his accuracy will be fine. Hopefully kick power is kind to us. Charles Kowalik, small outside linebacker. I don't even know if he makes the team, to be honest, just because the speed and agility, I just don't think play in Division I college football. Not all these players will have a chance to make an impact next year, and most will be red-shirted. But I think it's at least a solid class that fills in at a lot of positions to give us players that will hopefully develop, like 65 overall Chauncey Levinberry with his coverage ratings where they are, his agility, speed, excel, all that's in the B's. He should be developmental, at the very least a slot guy. I think he's smaller, so might just be your future slot corner. And then Carl Gaddy. Hopefully we get decent pass and impact block there. It says he's a pass blocker, so I'm counting on that being better than his 74 run blocking. Hopefully we see that he's a good 4-star tackle. Cameron Williams. I'm interested in how he ends up with the throwing ratings, because he could be a really good backup quarterback to Jacoby Criswell, and he does have 75 speed. I think that's enough in this game, although his acceleration's a 72, so he wouldn't be as good as Criswell in that department, but he does have some moves, some broken tackle ability. He's 245 pounds, so we'll see about him. You don't see too many 6-foot, 240-pound quarterbacks. In the offseason, who do you think we should focus on? You know, Corey Smolik here. I think that goes without saying. He's going to be one of our top targets in the offseason. Probably going to get a lot of the points. Then you have Caden Riley here we're in first place for. And good speed acceleration combo there. We don't know yet where he wins as a defensive end, but I'm intrigued. Trinell Crutcher, JUCO running back. Good agility, good acceleration, spin move elusiveness. He'll be somebody we're targeting. Got a wide receiver here whose name I'll have to learn how to pronounce if we do get him. 90 speed, doesn't have great hands. Hopefully the route running is decent. He needs something decent to lean on while something else develops. Aaron Powell, a losing battle right now against Alabama. I do like him. We have to be pretty aggressive, I think, to win that one. Isaiah Ajawara. We're in third place in this battle, but that B speed is staring at me, and I'm intrigued there, and I know he has at least some pass rushing skills. So I want to actually rank him a little bit higher so that in the offseason I know that, hey, this is a guy I want to put some points into. But I don't know if it'll be enough if I only go like 2,000 points. Got Trey Thompson here, a linebacker. Again, just decent speed. He's more of a walk-on player. Justin Seaton. No. Some of these players were just on the board, but I didn't really have any serious intention. I just scouted them, and they were kind of still on the board. So I think I'll be putting a lot of points then into Smolik and Crutcher. And then sprinkle a bit for Riley and Ajawara is kind of how I'm looking at it right now. But give me your thoughts down below. I hope you're enjoying the UTSA Revamped Dynasty, and there will be more on the way. It is Madden week here. Madden 23 is active through EA Play, and it comes out here in a few days officially. So content this week is focused on Madden. I'll be saving opening day with the Rockies and the off season with the UTSA Roadrunners for probably next week. But I'm focused on Madden for the time being. But I appreciate all of your support in this series. Give me your thoughts down below as we look ahead to year 3 and beyond with this team. Please leave a like if you enjoyed today's video. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Who makes it to the end of a recap video like this that looks like it's going to be at least 45 minutes long and isn't already subscribed, though, to be honest? Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you in the next one.